Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck for you, but before that, just a quick reminder to please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and every single click counts. And today's deck is going to be focused around upgrading the animated army Precon, and it's led by Bello, Bard of the Brambles. For 1 colorless, 1 red and 1 green, it's a legendary creature, Raccoon Bard 3/3 with during your turn, each non-equipment artifact and non-aura enchantment you control with mana value 4 or greater is a 4/4 elemental creature in addition to its other types and has indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So just like yesterday with Miss Bumbleflower, there's so much you can do with this commander. He has such great synergy with lots of different things. You could build him around affinity, which is one of my initial ideas. You could also build him very centered on copying effects, because the enchantments and artifacts enter immediately as creatures. That means that you can actually abuse cards that make copies of creatures to actually make copies of enchantments and artifacts, which could be very powerful. But really, I've tried not to touch the deck too much because I think it's already a pretty powerful and cool list, but I have made some changes to make it function a little bit more smoothly, as well as adding some powerful cards of my own. So without further ado, let's get started with the cards we've cut, and we're starting out with Brightcap, Badger, and Fungus Frolic. Tokens was a slight sub-theme in the deck originally, but I feel like it wasn't really enough and it didn't gel that well with what the commander is trying to do. So basically, this being a token card, that got cut from the deck. Burnished Heart has been cut from the deck just because it doesn't really synergize with our commander that well. It doesn't have mana value 4. It's an incredibly slow card for these days in commander, and I think we have better ramp options available. Grumgully the Generous is a decent card if we're doing tokens, and it can still work well with our deck, but there's just better things for our deck to do. Prosperous Bandit is another card that's just a little bit underpowered and doesn't really synergize that well with our commander. It is incredibly cute, so it was very hard to cut, but I think it's the right choice. Lotus Cobra was removed for a couple of reasons. First, there isn't much of a landfall theme really in the deck. It's another minor sub-theme, but it's too minor to really amount to much, so we're going to be cutting this because it's often just not going to do that much. Additionally, and this will come up a few more times in the cards we're going to talk about, our commander costs 3 mana, so ramping from 2 to 4 isn't really the best. Rampaging Bello is also cut because of course it's a landfall card. It makes nice tokens, but it's really just not going to cut it. Teapot Slinger is a limited card and basically only that. I don't really feel like it's good enough to fit in this deck. Tennishoot Dryad is a really powerful card and one that you might consider keeping. I just feel like without the focus on tokens, it's not really synergizing that well with the rest of the deck, but that being said, it does pump out a lot of power turn after turn after turn, so you might want to put it back in if you're just building for power. Wondertail Mentor was an easy cut. Yes, it can grow bigger, and yes, it taps for mana, but it just taps for 1 mana, and it's just not powerful enough for commander. Cultivate was also cut because we have way better mana ramp options available. This is also a 3 mana card, just like our commander, which is not what we want. The same applies to Fellow Stone. Ramping from 2 to 4 is not great, and having our rampy artifacts is even less good, so I don't feel bad at all about cutting this one. Gruul Signet, Mindstone, and Talisman of Impulse all follow the same logic as Fellow Stone. They're just not really going to do enough in this deck to justify their inclusion, and we have way better mana ramp options available. For similar reasons, we're also cutting Explore and Lanoir Loam Speaker. I don't really see why any of these are in the deck. They don't synergize particularly well. They also don't really ramp us into our commanders, so it just seems very easy to cut both of these. Bootlegger's Stash is a decent card in the right deck, and that deck is a deck that's extremely focused on treasures. Our deck is unfortunately not. There are some mild treasure synergies, but not enough to want to run a card like Bootlegger's Stash, even though it does work okay with our commander. Arcane Signet is yet another mana rock that we can safely cut because it's just not going to work as well as some other ramp options. Outpost Siege is one that I can see re-including, but since we're cutting a lot of the token cards, this becomes less good. It does synergize a little bit with our commander, but we've got better cards that do that anyway. Harmonize is one that you could definitely put back in if you have the slots. However, we have included a lot of 4 and 5 mana cards, and we also have a lot of ways to naturally draw cards with the deck, so this doesn't really do as well in this deck as in others. We're now going to move on to our inclusions, and first up are 2 cards that I'm really surprised are not in the deck already. Those are Scampering Surveyor and Solemn Simulacrum. Both of these fit perfectly with our commander. They ramp us and they provide value, and they're also 4-drop artifacts. I really don't understand why they weren't in the deck in the first place. Nylea, God of the Hunt, is another great card in the deck. One of the issues I found when I was first playing this deck out of the box is that it's very difficult to push damage through without trample, so we've included a bunch of ways to do that. Nylea is one of the best because it's very difficult to kill her naturally, even when our commander isn't out, but she also benefits from our commander's ability, so it's just a very good card in the deck. Llanowar Elves, Elvish, Mystic, Birds of Paradise, and Finned Horn Elves are all excellent mana dorks in this deck because they help us ramp from 1 to 3, which is exactly what our commander wants to be doing. Additionally, since we're probably going to be drawing a lot of cards thanks to our commander, the fact that they might occasionally get swept up in a board wipe isn't as bad as it would otherwise be. We also have some other ramp options that actually put lands into play, so overall I'm pretty comfortable adding these to the deck. Next up is Skitterbeam Battalion, and boy is this the perfect card for this deck. You prototype it for 5, you get 2 copies of it, they're all 2/2s, but that doesn't matter because Bello's gonna make them into 4/4 indestructible haste creatures with trample that also draw you cards when they deal damage. Just an absolute all-star inclusion in this deck, incredibly powerful cards. Next up we have Horde Hauler. Now we have a sub-theme of vehicles, as you're very likely to notice. The reason vehicles are so good with our commander is you don't need to crew them while he's out, so they just get to attack immediately, and this one is actually going to provide a ton of value when it connects, so it's really good in the deck. Thunderhawk Gunship is great for multiple reasons. First, it's going to give us some extra bodies when it enters, which is really nice. Then it immediately is going to get to attack with Bello and provide all of our other creatures flying, which means that they're more likely to get through and deal damage. Stora's Familiar is going to provide a nice amount of discount to a fair number of cards in the deck, but also it just works very well with our commander since it smashes in immediately as a flying 4/4 indestructible that draws us cards. Rule Warplow is one of those other ways in which we get to give our creatures trample, which is very important in the deck as mentioned. Cybership is very solid by giving us a bunch of bodies whenever it connects, and it's going to connect very easily with our commander. Untethered Express is really solid because it comes with trample on its own, which means it's very difficult to profitably block, and it's going to grow every time it attacks, and that grow is permanent and stacks with our commander, which makes it very good. Glorious Sunrise is a powerful card with our commander, but also it's just going to provide every little bit of stuff we need, as well as another way to get trample. Gimli's Reckless Might can be great for giving our creatures haste if for whatever reason we don't have our commander out, but apart from that it just works very well, seeing as it's extremely likely that we have total power 8 or more. We just need 2 cards to work with our commander, and then the fight is also very good with all of our indestructible creatures. Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth are extra ways we can ramp into our commander on turn 2, which is obviously what the deck is intending to do. Frontier Siege works very well with our commander by being a 4-drop enchantment, and then it's also going to pay for itself very quickly by adding mana every main phase. Finally, Flame Shadow Conjuring works very well with our commander by smashing in immediately as a 4-drop with indestructible and haste, but then it also can make copies of all of our enchantments and artifacts and creatures as they enter the battlefield. That means that we can get some ETB triggers off some of our artifacts, and some of them have very powerful triggers, so this is a great synergy with our commander and what the deck is doing. So there you have it. That has been my Bello Barter the Brambles deck tech. I really like the way this deck plays out of the box, so it's been very fun for me to upgrade it and play it against my friends since we've all got one of these precons. But what do you think? Are there any cards that you think I missed? Any cards you think I shouldn't have swapped out? Let me know in the comment section below. I always make sure to read all of your comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.